Okay, cool. So thanks so much for joining me, everyone. I'm Samir. I am the founder here at Tech Sales Mentors. What I want to say at the start is, hey, don't worry if you miss anything. All of this is being recorded, and so if you want to go back and remember something I said or whatever, you can always watch the recording. For now, I just want you to sit back, enjoy, ask me questions throughout. I'm going to go through sort of how I broke into tech sales, how I've helped other people do the same. And so ask your questions throughout. Would love to answer anything you guys have. And so to tell you a little bit more about myself, give you a quick intro on me, and kind of how I broke into tech sales and where my life has gone since then, all that kind of stuff. When I was in college back at Michigan State, I was pursuing a finance degree, and it was a very hard process to get into investment banking, those types of roles. And that environment actually taught me how to break into tech sales, how to use the same interview techniques, cold emailing techniques to get into interviews, all that kind of stuff. I got my first job in tech sales, and really the way I thought about it was I want to use this as an entry path to be in tech. Tech sales wasn't my ultimate goal. I saw this as sort of, I'm someone who's non-technical, doesn't know how to code. Tech sales is a great starting point, and then I can build my career in tech from there. And so, from tech sales, I ended up joining some early stage startups, and then eventually, became a founder. And that's what I'm doing now with Tech Sales Mentors. We are 2 years and 11 months into this amazing business, and we help people get great jobs in tech sales. And so let's kind of get into the promise of what you guys are going to get out of this today, and all you're going to learn. Really, you're going to learn from my job search of breaking into tech sales, but also the 50 plus people we have helped do that same thing. And so we'll go through frameworks on how to go about doing this in a quicker, faster way. And hopefully, with the gold that I drop for you guys, you can take away a few actionable tips that will make your job search easier, faster, or, less stressful. And so probably jumping into, the first thing I see with, candidates and what I saw in myself back when I was in college was this self-limiting belief. And it's this belief that I can't do this. I can't get into this industry. And so I remember for myself, I was like, oh, I can never be in tech because the only people I saw in tech were the Steve Jobs of the world, right? The Elon Musks, the Mark Zuckerbergs, these technical geniuses, right? That know how to code, all that kind of stuff. I tried that and that wasn't for me. And so I didn't really think like, oh, this is a pathway that's available for someone who's, more of a communicator, more business focused, all that kind of stuff. Eventually, I learned from people in the industry that no, there is this industry called tech sales, and you can get into it. And what I'll say is not anyone can get into a tech sales role. You may have heard that before, but I want to preface it on sort of what are the 3 things that I see someone needs to have to get into tech sales. And so really it's probably 3 things. One, it's good communication skills. And so if you're incredibly shy, if you are nervous, if you sound scripted, if you're just kind of an awkward communicator, you're not going to do well in a sales role, right? Because you're calling on people who don't really want you to call them initially. You're talking to people who view you as a salesperson. And so if you're not a good communicator, then you need to work on your communication skills before you want to break into tech sales. The second piece is sort of applicable experience, right? So that can mean, hey, I have sales experience, just not in tech, in other industries, right? Or it could mean I've done other types of roles that are applicable to sales, right? And so an example of that would be a business owner, right? As a business owner, you have to sell, right? Or as a recruiter, right? You have to find candidates, you have to prospect candidates, you have to get on their radar, you have to convince them to take a call with you. Other sort of roles that are applicable are ones that are considered high status, right? So, in tech, we view some other roles outside of our industry as like, maybe we don't want to do that role, but we view that person as, oh, they, are good at corporate life. They're good at work. They have some sort of shared understanding of, how do you operate in a corporate environment. So like consulting is an example, investment banking is an example. Those would be some of them there. And then probably like the last applicable experience, it's relevant to what happened with me, was I was in college and I didn't really have sales experience, but I had business internships and I had sort of the personality traits for someone in tech sales. And so we can dive deeper into that. So that's another bucket of people who get jobs in tech sales. They're coming out of college, they're open to in-person roles in San Francisco, New York City, Austin, stuff like that. And um, like, that was me, but, just so you get a sense of other people who, that's been the exact same case for, I want to share a few profiles with you. So you guys get a sense of this. And so, let me share my screen here. And, if you guys could also just comment in the chat and let me know, hey, yeah, this is working. The screen share thing is working. This would be an example of someone, Tadiori. And so before, we helped him get a job at Service Titan as a sales development rep. Before that, he didn't really have any tech experience. He wasn't like a huge techie. He was in the Air Force. He did some sort of, business analyst role that wasn't really sales focused. And then he was a business owner. But none of these roles were really focused on, like understanding software or anything like that. Really, he just showed he had the personality traits, right? He was a good communicator. He showed that I've been a top performer in life. I know how to make cold calls. I know how to persevere through rejection. And so Tadiori is one example. Another example would be Jen. Jen started at 15.5 a few months ago. And, before our program, she was a real estate agent, right? She was a retail sales rep. She was a store supervisor at, I think this is a grocery store. I don't exactly remember. And so, you can see Jen is 10 years plus out of college. And so, this really is possible for lots of different people. What you just want to focus on is, do you have those sort of three things that I chatted about earlier? Communication skills, applicable experience, and then the last part that I actually haven't talked about is being coachable, right? And so through the job search, you are going to fail and you are going to mess up, right? And so I'll walk you through some stories of myself doing that, but you have to learn from those instances. And some of that stuff you can figure out on your own, but really I recommend sort of utilizing mentors, people who are 2, 3, 4 steps ahead of you, someone who's gone through that exact same job search as you. They're going to help you spot those errors way faster than you can. And so, so that's the first step, is like, you have to, if you have those three things, if you have communication skills, applicable experience, and you're coachable, believe in yourself and then start taking action. And that's really the difference between people in tech sales and people who just haven't taken the jump. Is the people in tech sales believed in themselves. They said, yes, I can do this because anyone's doing it. And then they started taking action. And so then probably the second incorrect belief that I see candidates have often, and something I've struggled a lot with in life, is this thinking of, okay, I want to learn how to do this thing. I am going to consume all the content there is, and I'm going to take perfect notes, and I'm going to know how to do this thing perfectly. And that's how I'm going to get a job in tech sales. Honestly, that's like saying, oh, I watch NFL football on Sunday from, noon to 10 p.m. And I watch it every Sunday for the past 10 years of my life. And so I definitely know how to throw a football. I definitely know how to catch a one-handed pass. It's not the case, right? And so that's the same thing in this world where, you can there's like limitless content you can consume on how to get a job in tech sales. And the problem with a lot of advice is it's too generic and it's not focused enough on you and the specific problem you're facing. Let me give you an example. If I were to ever get the advice I saw online that, oh, you should be a nicer person, that would not be good advice for me, because I'm already a nice person and I already let people, I'm a people pleaser. And so I don't need that feedback. I need the opposite feedback of that. And the only way I can get that is sort of if I'm working with someone who's a few steps ahead of me and understand specifically my situation and the exact feedback I need to hear. And so, the first 2 years of myself being an entrepreneur, my sort of business went a lot slower simply because I was consuming so much content, entrepreneurship content on Twitter, and thinking, oh, I have to do this, I have to do that. And all of that stuff was bullshit. And so in the third year, I started listening more to mentors who were 2, 3, 4 steps ahead of me in business. And, they gave me the advice I really needed to hear. And, business has taken off since that. And so, that's kind of two big at a high level, two big beliefs that you need to get out of your head, that I can't do this. And then, oh, like if I want to do this, I'm going to consume endless content. Those are two sort of incorrect beliefs you need to remove from your, mindset. And so let's get into the meat of what we wanted to talk today. So kind of the agenda for what we'll talk about today is sort of how I broke into tech sales, my story of doing it. And then I'll walk you through how we've replicated that same process for many SDR candidates who, have gotten jobs within 50 days of working with us. And as I go through this, please ask questions, add them in the chat, and we can go from there. And so, and before I jump into that, I do see a question from Ever, I believe is how you pronounce it. Basically he's saying, I got a job offer. It got rescinded after a background check, and they wouldn't give him any insight into what happened. And yeah, that like sucks. And I'm sorry to hear that. And the thing with employers is they're not incentivized to tell you the hard truth of, here's the reason why we didn't do this. I think for reasons of lawsuits, and really they're just not incentivized to. There's no upside for them. All that's in it for them is just being a good person. And if that's the incentive, like not a lot of people are gonna, act on that. And so sorry to hear that, Ever. But yeah, that's why I recommend always having someone who's in the few steps ahead of you, who can understand exactly what's happening in your situation, and help you understand why this happened, how to prevent it in the future, all that kind of stuff. And so, so let's talk about now how I broke into sales, so on and so forth. And so there's really 3 phases to this. The first phase I want to talk about is choosing companies, right? And so every tech company is not the same, meaning all tech companies aren't created equal. Every sort of city now is we're a tech hub, right? And so the original tech hub, right, that's like San Francisco, right? But now there's a few other big ones that are important. New York City, lots of great tech companies there. Austin, some great tech companies here. But now every city is we're a tech hub, right? Oh, Detroit, I'm from Detroit. Detroit says they're a tech hub. It's not really the case. The quality of companies that are coming out of Detroit are not as great as coming out of San Francisco or New York City. And that's important for you, because think about it like this. If you were considering a career in basketball, where would you want to play? You'd want to play in the NBA, right? You wouldn't want to, little Twitter joke here, you wouldn't want to play for the Shanghai Sharks. And that's just, a Chinese team, right? Because in China, the pay is less. It's less prestigious. There's less growth opportunities, all that kind of stuff. And so you want to have that same mindset when it comes to choosing companies in tech. There's a huge difference between a great tech company and an average one, and it's going to have a significant impact on your career. And so I remember my cousin who's also in tech. His name is Sean Puri. You all should listen to his podcast, My First Million. It's amazing. But I remember he told me one time when I was sort of thinking through, career decisions, he said, hey, listen, at the end of the day, we all work similar amounts of hours. We all work, 40, 50, 60 hours a week, whatever. And so, he said, I'm a CEO. I work, let's say 50 hours a week. That janitor over there, he works also 50 hours a week. But we're going to have way different career outcomes because what we decide to work on, what opportunity we decide to work on. And so that's why it's really critical to choose the right sort of tech company here, because it's going to have vastly different outcomes on sort of where your career is going to go. And so to give you guys more insight on, what happened for me, maybe I'll share my screen here and we can just sort of talk through some of these things. And so let's do this. So where I started my job search was on Angel List, and so now these days it's called Well Found. But think of this as a place where all startups sort of recruit talent. And so you probably use LinkedIn Jobs. That works as well. This is another good one. And what I came across was this company called Sift. Back in the day, they were called Sift Science. That was their cool name. Now this is their like corporate name. And when I joined, or why I decided to choose Sift was just like a few reasons, right? So let's talk through company selection. How do you identify if a tech company is legit or not? The first most easiest filter is like who's funding them? Who are the venture capitalists that are funding them? So if we were to look that up, I don't think really Crunchbase. There's this tool called Crunchbase that allows you to see funding, but it's not as great anymore. And so let's see if we can like see this on PitchBook. And so let's see. Okay, cool. Okay, they're not saying it. So whatever. What I ended up finding were some of the venture capitalists that were investing in Sift, and I wanted to see sort of who had these venture capitalists invested in before, right? So one of them was called USV. They were one of the first funders into Sift. And so if we look at USV, we can look at who have they invested in the past. And so if we can just sort of look here at let's do this status public. So we can kind of see over time companies they've invested in, like have they invested in companies that have grown to be huge, right? Okay, Coinbase, right? The number one crypto exchange. Cloudflare, that's a public company in sort of our tech sales world. Duolingo, right? We all know Duolingo. Lending Club, Twilio, another big Twilio and MongoDB, other big tech sales companies. Twitter, right? Etsy. So like it was clear, and this was the case for lots of venture capitalists that were investing in Sift. And so that was the initial filter for me was, okay, this is a company that's backed by great venture capitalists. Those venture capitalists have access to data on the company, how it's performing, and also have interviewed the team, the leadership team, the founder extensively, and have put their stamp of approval on it. So I thought, cool, that is a good initial indicator for me. The other things that I think are important when it comes to choosing a company is tech sales reps. They can get paid really well. The reason they can get paid well is because they sell big deals. And so if you're selling small deals worth $100, you're not going to get paid a lot. But if you're selling deals that are worth, hundreds of thousands of dollars, then, there's a lot of pay in that there for you. And so it looks like Sift took down their pricing here, but, Sift is sort of a machine learning product that helps companies stop fraud on their website, right? So let's say you're Airbnb, you can face fraud in many ways, right? Someone can post a fake listing, someone could post a fake review, someone could use a stolen credit card to make a charge. And so these are all forms of fraud, and Sift was using machine learning, which is basically just a more niche form of artificial intelligence to stop that. And the software that they were charging, that software that they offered as a product was, would sell for tens of thousands of dollars per year, hundreds of thousands of dollars per year, sometimes upwards of $1 million. And so because of that, it means these are complex deals. It means they're big deals. It means as a tech sales rep, you can, make a lot of money. And so that's important, is like understanding, hey, I want to join an organization where they have the best funders, because that means you're going to get paid the most. It's going to attract the best talent, which you can learn from and build skills, learning from the best talent. And the company is going to grow fast, which means career growth opportunities for you. And so as an example, I didn't stay at Sift because I wanted to be a founder. That's how I viewed tech sales. But if you're interested in pursuing a career in tech sales and joining an organization where you can have a career path, let's take a look at what happened with Andrew. So Andrew is a buddy of mine from Michigan State. I tried to convince all my friends to get into tech after leaving Michigan State and joining Sift. No one really listened to me. They're like, you're weird. Tech is weird. This was back in 2017. And so Andrew listened, and it's worked out pretty nicely for him. And so you can kind of see here, he went from being a BDR, did that for a year or two, performed well, And then he's jumped up this ladder of being an account executive, right? So this SMB role, you're selling to small to medium sized businesses. In this role, you can make in the range of, let's say, 115, 140K. As a mid-market account executive, compensation is in the range of, let's say, 160 to 220K. And then ultimately, as an enterprise rep, you're selling to the biggest companies in the world, the Fortune 500. And so compensation is in the range of 250 to 350K. And so, that's worked out very nicely for Andrew. But what's good to understand here is when you join a company with great talent, that opens up future opportunities for you. And so some of the opportunities I want to share for you have been opened up for people that joined SIFT and eventually went on to leave. And so Emerald is an example of someone who, she was my SDR manager back at SIFT. And so before SIFT, you can see she was at this company, Twilio. Twilio has gone on to become a public company worth about 20 billion today. And the reason Emerald went from Twilio to SIFT was because she did good work there and she impressed the sales leader at Twilio. And so this kind of all started for us with Zishan here. And so Zishan, you can see he originally started, even before Twilio, he was at AWS, Amazon Web Services. If you're not familiar with Amazon Web Services, this is how Amazon generates all of their profit. And this is like a business worth probably upwards of 100 billion or 200 billion, not exactly sure, but somewhere in that range. And so he was at Twilio, took the business from 0 to 100 million in revenue. And when he went to SIFT, his job as sort of a VP, as a sales leader, is to recruit great talent. And so he's going to look to his past and see who's done good work with him, right? So Emerald is an example of someone who he brought along with him to SIFT, right? Another example here I want to show for you in terms of understanding why networks are so valuable is Thomas. And so Thomas was someone who he was one of the first product managers at Twilio. And then he also joined us at SIFT. And so after SIFT, he went on to become a founder at Calixa. And at Calixa, he wasn't really a sales guy, right? He understood product, but he didn't really know how to sell. And so what he did was he asked his network, hey, who do you know that knows how to sell? And so he mentioned, he asked Emerald, oh, sorry, Alexa, shut up. Okay, sorry. That wasn't Alexa a person. That was Alexa a robot. Emerald, Thomas asked Emerald, hey, who at Snowflake or who from your past should I have, help me on the sales front? And since I did great work with Emerald at SIFT and she saw me as someone who would perform well in this environment, she recommended me. And so then I became an advisor for Calixa. And that was a really critical time for me when I was starting my business. That was really necessary money that I needed. And so really understanding here, like the value of networks and how it can propel your career is important, and sort of joining the right tech companies here. And so, so that's the first phase, is sort of, it was choosing companies for me. So at Tech Sales Mentors, Aaron, you're right. Amazon is listening, and I gotta get this out of here. And so when it comes to Tech Sales Mentors, we take that same approach with candidates. We have our own internal job board. This is sort of a curated list of top companies in tech. And we want to make sure that these companies are backed by strong venture capitalists. And we want to get our candidates into opportunities where they're going to get paid top of market. They're attracting the best talent that our candidates can learn from. And these companies are growing fast. So then our candidates can, grow their careers as well. And so actually, Aaron, I see him in the chat. He's a great example of someone who, he was at a tech company, and he decided that, he was at a tech company and he decided, hey, like, I don't see sort of a pathway to career promotion here. Can you guys help me out and get me at a company where I can have the career growth that I want? And so, Aaron, let me pull up Aaron's profile for you. Let's see here. And yeah, he's also a model on the side. I don't know if he actually is, but he definitely should consider it. And so, Aaron was at Gremlin before, didn't really have that sort of pathway to account executive. Came to us, asked for our help, and said, "Hey, I want to join a great tech company with a clear career path." And now he's at Devo or Devo. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, Aaron. So my bad there. But yeah, that's sort of what we want to help you do here. Is not just get a SDR role, because you don't want to be an SDR forever. As an SDR, you're going to get paid, let's say, in the range of 60 to 70 to 80 to 90 to 100K. And that's okay. That's like a good start. But really, the real money in tech sales is all the roles after being an SDR. And so it's really critical, not that you just join any tech company, but one that has a clear career path for you. So that's phase one, choosing companies. Okay, cool. So we know, all right, I want to go after these companies, so on and so forth. These are legit tech companies. And let's go into phase two here. Phase two is like getting into interviews with these companies. And so here's how it worked for me. I went to Michigan State. Michigan State is a party school. We're not known as the most intelligent individuals in the world. And, that put a little chip on my shoulder, still is there, as you can tell. And at the time when I was at Michigan State, like I mentioned earlier, I was in finance. And so I was trying to get into investment banking roles. And to be honest, investment banks weren't coming to Michigan State to recruit talent. They were coming to the University of Michigan. And so we had to find a way to get into interviews. And the way we did that was through cold emailing. And so this is kind of where I learned this key skill set of just creating an email to send to a hiring manager, to send to an employee, to sort of, convince them that, hey, you should chat with me. You'll like me. You'll think I'm a good fit for the company, and you'll get me in the interview process or move me forward in the interview process. And so I have some examples here of cold emails that I've sent in the past. And let me see if I can add them in here. So let me pull them here. All right, let's do that. So let's see if that worked. Make sure it did. Okay, yeah, let me pull this up. I think I posted on LinkedIn. Yeah, I posted on LinkedIn. So let's see here. Share the screen. All right, cool. So there we go. Okay, cool. So where is it? So this was the cold email I used to break into tech sales. And so you can kind of see here, these are what I would say is like, there's bad cold emails, there's good cold emails, and there's great cold emails. This is like a good one, maybe closer to bad, but like, it's okay. It can pass as good. I may be a little bit biased here. And so, hey, I'm just sort of like you can just see the grammar's on point. It's readable, all that kind of stuff. Don't make grammar mistakes. You're applying for a sales role. You have to be good at written communication. And, I'm sort of mentioning my interest in tech, all that kind of stuff. And then I'm sort of calling out this hiring manager, Emerald. I'm talking about the companies she's worked at. This was Twilio. Here I say Sif Science. And then I just ask her for a call to action. I asked her for, some time if we can speak. And so that would be, that'd be a good cold email. What's like a bad one is just like, hey, I want to interview at your company. Like, can I do that? Like that would be an example of like a bad one. And so like don't do something like that. This is like another good one. So my job after tech sales was I wanted to work with a founder and be his first employee to learn how to be a founder. And so this guy, Solomon Ali, let's pull him up here, was a legend. And so he had started a few companies before I worked with him. And so let's see if we can find him here. Yeah, there you go. So yeah, he did Microsoft for a few years and was like, oh, this is Microsoft shit. It's not for me. I want to be a founder. And so he started as Gut. That got acquired in 2008. And then this was the one where, he made the big dollars here. TinyCo. This was a company he raised venture capital for. He ended up selling it for, I think like 9 figures or something like that. And he was starting his third company and he needed employee number 1. And so that's basically what I did. I kind of, I met him at a networking event once, so I gave him context there. I told him I want to be his first hire. I sold myself a little bit, right? I told him about what I was good at. And then, yeah, I had my call to action. So these are examples of like good cold emails, and they work, but they could be better. And so let me show you like what a great cold email looks like. So let's see if I can add this in here. And so these are sort of the cold emails we create for candidates. So to get candidates into, when an SDR candidate decides to work with us, they actually don't have to do anything to get into interviews. We do it all for them. And so this is an example of an email we created for an SDR candidate. And I want to show you the response. And so kind of like, yeah, her name's spelled that kind of way. I don't know why it is, but more power to her. And it's saying, hey, like I saw your company as a leader in this thing 5 times. That's awesome. Like, that seeing, your product get that kind of love makes me want to sell it as your next SDR. So that's what you want to start with. You want to start with calling out something you found out about them, their company, on their LinkedIn, whatever. Then you want to sell yourself, right? Okay, this candidate, right? He's exceeding quota. He does cold calls. He sends cold emails, right? And so he's really selling himself. And then finally, he has this call to action here. It's, hey, why are we sending this email? Because we want to get in a damn interview, right? We're not getting any interviews. We want to get in an interview. And so that's sort of the ending here. And you can see here, like before I show you what she responded with, I want you to know there's so many candidates that send out outreaches to hiring managers and recruiters. The reason they don't get responses is because it doesn't look like this. It's like I mentioned earlier, it's that bad cold email that says, hey, can I get 10 minutes of your time to chat about the SDR role? Or, oh, I'd love to interview for your company. You need to do a better job sort of putting forth your best first impression. And you can see Megan talks about that, right? I get hundreds of these types of emails a week. I wish I had time to reply to them all, but I don't, right? And we're just too busy. But yours was so eloquently written that I wanted to take the time to reach out. And so these are the kind of emails that we'll create for SDR candidates that we're working with. And when a candidate works with us, we really streamline this process for them. Within 1 week of working with us, they'll be in 2 to 4 interviews. And so, one example of kind of a reframe here that may make you think like, damn, I'm being like swimming in interviews and I'll have lots of options to choose from. That's what we want you to feel like. I think often in the job search, it can feel like you're chasing, right? You're trying to get that opportunity and no one's accepting you. And we want to kind of flip that. We want to be experts in your job search and be like, no, we got this. Here's how we're going to do it. Here's how it's all going to run. And so that was actually the case for this. One of the first candidates I ever worked with was Rashida. And Rashida, I helped her land this role at Blend as a mid-market SDR. And I remember, I think she actually said this on her review for us. She's basically like, I went from having no interviews or, something like that. Let's see. Okay, yeah. I was able to see progress within the first week of working together. I got to a place where I was rejecting roles and interviews, which I never thought I'd be in the position to do so. Right. And so we want to understand what your goals are, what this company wants to look like, what you want out of a company. And if a company doesn't align with that, then we won't move forward with them. So as an example, she got an offer from a company called HackerOne. And the on target earnings, the salary she was offered, I think was like 50 or 60K. And I was like, we shouldn't accept this. You are a candidate capable of 70 to 80K. And so that's why mentorship is important, is like, you may think like, I don't know what I'm worth. We work with so many candidates with all skill levels and experience. We know based on the hiring market and your experience, like what's the best sort of offer you can get. And so that's phase 2 is sort of, you got to send good cold emails to sort of get into interviews with these companies. Don't apply online. Waste of time. Absolute waste of time. And so then you're in interviews, right? That's awesome. Now it's about crushing interviews, right? And so how did that work for me? Really, there was like 3 phases to this. So one was just getting in the reps, lots of practice. In the preceding years before that, I'd interviewed with lots of companies and I'd made lots of stupid mistakes. And so a few of them that come to mind is my first sort of corporate interview I ever did was with General Electric. They had some sort of like finance program. And I remember I said, she said, "Oh, yeah, why'd you choose Michigan State?" And I said, "Oh, like my brother went here, and yeah, like the campus is really beautiful." And, if you're applying for, a role at a company where you're trying to build a career, that is not the answer you want to give, right? You want to tell a better story here, even if it isn't true. And so what I should have said was something like, well, we have I could have mentioned my brother, but I could have mentioned it in a better way. Here's kind of how I would answer it today. It would be something like, well, the first reason was, my brother went to Michigan State. And so my brother is 6 to 7 years ahead of me in life. And where he's going, where his career is at, is where I want to go. And so I believe deeply in not thinking I know everything, but listening to people who are smarter and ahead of me and doing as they say, right? If they have a career that I want, I'm going to listen to everything they say and execute on that. And actually, he's on the GE finance team, which is the role I'm interviewing for. So that's why that was the initial reason I chose Michigan State. The second reason is because there's this finance program here that is, that is very elite, that helps you get onto Wall Street, whatever, some other stuff there. But, you need to tell better stories. And so, it comes from practice. Is saying stupid shit in interviews is a great way to learn not to say stupid shit anymore. Another example. What was it? A interviewer, an interviewer like introduced himself to me, and he said, like I came up to him and I was like, "Hey, sir, like great to meet you." And he said, like, no need to call me sir, like call me John, all that kind of stuff. And like, I'm like, okay, but like, I'm like sweating, I'm nervous, all that kind of stuff. And I sit down and like, there's like a moment of silence. And when you're not confident, you just like fill those moments of silence. And so in that moment, I respond and I say, uh, hello, sir, I'm Samir. And I just did that thing like 10 seconds ago. And so, you got to get practice reps out so you're not nervous. You don't sound like an idiot, whatever. And it's not about, again, like, listening to all sort of content on, interviews. It's doing interviews is how you get better at them. So that's the first piece. Then the second piece was I'd never done a tech sales interview. And so when I got selected for an on-site with them to come to San Francisco and interview with Emerald, the SDR manager, Avik, an SDR on the team, Zishan, the head of sales, and like Marcus Ryder, an account executive. And so I didn't know what to expect because, yeah, I'd never done a tech sales interview. And so the best way to sort of approach that is over prepare, right? And just don't let the reason you don't get the job be because you didn't do enough research or work beforehand. And so this was around the time of finals week is when my on-site interview was with them. And I was not studying for finals. I was literally filling out whiteboards and like of customer stories of SIF science. And I was, filling out whiteboards of these people's like backgrounds and questions I want to ask them and all that kind of stuff. I was just being a maniac, a psycho about knowing everything I could about this company and the people I was interviewing with. So I could sound well prepared, right? And so I'm still going to be nervous, but when you are over prepared, you're a little less nervous. And so, when you're probably like, well, like, what do I learn about a company? There's so much to learn. Really, if you're applying for a tech sales role, you want to learn about, if you can understand the customer's world, then you will be a great sales rep. If you can understand like what their type of customer deals with, what issues they deal with, what they care about, what their goals are, how they see value in the product, then you'll be a great salesperson. And so that's what I did. I just obsessed over their customer case studies page, and I figured out sort of the issues that these customers were dealing with on a daily basis. And so I could speak pretty intelligently to these things. And then probably the last thing that was important for me was storytelling. And so one mentor I had in college was this guy named Jamie Carlstead, and guy was just a great storyteller. And you know, the truth is like when a recruiter or hiring manager interviews someone for a role, they're also interviewing 10 other people, and most of you are going to sound the same because you're saying I'm a hard worker. Oh, I'm gonna perform really well, all that kind of stuff. Everyone's saying those things. Instead, you have to tell stories that show you're a hard worker. You have to tell me stories that show you're a top performer, that you've performed well in life. And so I remember, I was doing mock interviews with Jamie because he was a few steps ahead of me, and he knew all of the issues that I would have. So I basically told him, tell me about yourself answer. And he's like, that was 5 minutes long. You didn't talk about anything related to like sales. You didn't talk about anything related to about why you wanted to be in tech. Like you just talked about finance the whole time. You're not applying for a finance role. You're applying for a tech sales role. And so when it comes to storytelling, that it's a very hard skill to develop. What I would just, recommend is the best way to become a better storyteller is like two things. One is sort of, I don't know if you guys get this feeling, but like when I'm out to dinner with my friends or I'm on a date and I'm about to tell a story, like I really try to sell that story. I really try to think of what are the juiciest bits I want to talk about, right? To keep this person hooked, engaged, interested. That's how you got to treat your interview answers as well. That'd be the first thing. Second thing I would say is get a mentor who's, done lots of interviews and can critique your stories and be like, don't say this is a red flag. Oh, this is boring. Oh, you're, not saying things they care about, stuff like that. And so that's how I kind of did it in my own world. And I crushed those interviews and, ended up getting the offer from Civ Science, and I joined them, and that was awesome. And so here's kind of like now how we do that at Tech Sales Mentors, really with any candidate before any real interview that they have, we're doing mock interviews with them, and we're just brutally honest with them because like I mentioned earlier, generally in your job search, no employer is brutally honest with you. All they ever say is, oh, we went with someone with more experience. They don't say the truth to you, which is, I can't even tell if you're applying for a sales role because you have all these, like, you're also talking about how you want recruiter roles. Or they won't tell you things like, well, you said in the interview, the main reason you want this job is because you want a remote job, right? They're not going to give you this brutally honest feedback. And so with us through these mock interviews, we're going to say, here are all the red flags of what you're saying. Here's what the employer is going to think when you say these sort of red flaggy things. But here's the good stuff. Tell me more about these stories and let's make them a bigger part of your answer. And so, kind of we're just going to come up with your answers for you. And then you practice them, because come interview time, you really have to deliver. And so, one example of someone we helped do that was, let me pull up his profile, was Yusuf. And so Yusuf, actually, before he joined our program, like 2 years before he joined our program, he was in a tech sales boot camp, and he just didn't get a job. And so he kind of like gave up on the tech sales dream, and he ended up like becoming a business owner of this like agency business. And then he came to us, and when he came to us, within 28 days, we were able to get him an offer at CloudBees. And simply, the reason why we were able to was because he had good things to talk about, but he just wasn't saying the right things. And so I remember after one mock interview, he said, you just told my life story for me better than I ever could. And he's probably exaggerating, probably hyping us up a little bit, and that's my dude, so I love him for that. But what we're really great at, we're really great at this really weird niche thing, which is the SDR hiring market. And so we know what these hiring managers want to hear, simply because like we've hired lots of SDRs and through our jobs. And so when I was at Sift, my manager Emerald eventually put me on the hiring panel for SDRs, and so I would have sort of this scorecard of how I need to grade this candidate. How did they do in this SDR interview? Um, and then when we'd all sort of come together to deliberate on a candidate, I could understand other people's scorecard and how they were measuring candidates and why they would reject candidates or why they'd really accept candidates. And so we have that insider intel of like, here's why candidates get rejected. Here's kind of, why they get accepted as well. And so, Aaron, you make a great point here, which is embrace criticism, right? Like, it's almost like, you, if you want to learn something, stop trying to learn it on your own and just be open to help. And when you do that, when you let go of that burden that like, I got to figure this out on my own, your career accelerates a lot faster. And, I've seen that time and time again with people in my life. And so, kind of the last phase here of this call today is really two parts. Is one, I want to recap what's important in this SDR job search, but then throw some questions in the chat. Come on, guys. I want to hear you guys. I see Aaron. I see Chris. Who else has some questions for me? This is the chance right here, is to ask the questions. So feel free to throw those in there. And so, yeah, really what I think is important as you're considering sort of this tech sales job search and going about it is, one, find a mentor who's in the industry, who's gone through what you're going through and can just give you the advice that you need to hear. Don't choose any company. Choose a top tier tech company. You want to get in that elite network of talent, of employees, because that's going to be future career opportunities for you. And you're also going to learn a lot from these people who are highly intelligent and just crush work. And then once you're in that sort of network of great talent, then you need to do good work. You need to put your head down. You don't need to be networking. What you need to be doing is crushing your job. And if you're crushing your job, then senior leaders at your company, managers at your company, peers at your company are going to see that. And so when they go to their next opportunity, they're going to hit you up and say, hey, I need someone to fill this role. Do you want to interview? Because they trust the work you've done before. It's not like an interview where they just have to go off this person's word. They've seen sort of the hard evidence there. And then yeah, after you do good work, then you make lots of money is what happens. And so, that's kind of, what I think is important. And so, looks like we got a question here from Jamar. I hope it's Jamar. If I'm wrong, I apologize. And he says, can you send a link for top tier tech companies that are open to new talent with sales experience? So I don't have a link for you today. We are going to be open sourcing our job board, which is basically, a curated list of top tech companies that are hiring. And so follow or connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'll be posting that in the next week or two. And so you can check that out. In the meantime, for companies you're considering interviewing with, what you want to do is you want to Google sort of company name funding, and you want to read those news articles, see who's funding them, and look at those venture capitalists, look at their sort of websites, and you can see who they've invested in. And if you recognize some tech names there, then okay, this company, that's a good initial filter that they're legit here. But if you don't notice any of the tech companies, then probably not the best fit. And so, so that's what I would do there. So I don't see any other questions in the chat. So I guess we'll jump off from here. If you're interested in getting help landing a job in tech sales and you want it to happen in 50 days, then check out our program at techsalesmentors.com. And you can click sort of the free consultation button. And then, yeah, we can see how we can help you do that. Also, another thing, you should check out our free SDR course. It's also on our website, techsalesmentors.com. You can check it out there. I do see a few questions got added to the chat, so love that. So let's see here. Hasnain, my guy here, he says, what is your advice on growing in the same role? Or do you recommend putting yourself out there for other potential you could be missing out on? So every SDR, this is a common thing every SDR goes through. Every SDR, what I've noticed, and this is what happened for me as well, first 6 to 9 months of SDR life, you're like, this is so much learning. I'm so curious. I want to learn more. I want to work harder, all this kind of stuff. And then the next 6 to 9 months, you're just waiting for that promotion to account executive, to account manager, to SDR manager. And you kind of turn into like, a little like entitled person. At least that was like what I turned into. And what I would recommend is maybe like a few things here. One is like, is that career path available for you at your company? Okay, then like you need to be communicating with your manager, and then you need to be communicating with whatever team you want to get on. You need to communicate with that manager as well. You need to be getting in meetings and aligning on expectations on what does it take to get into this role, and what do I need to do to close that gap? And if I close that gap, does that mean sort of I would get this promotion immediately, or what would be a timeline there? And so understand expectations for promotion and then timeline of promotion. And so if your company has a history of promoting people, then you can be sure that that's the case. But if, your company's had the SDR function for 2, 3, 4 years, no one's getting promoted, it's constantly getting pushed off, all that kind of stuff, then, maybe it's not going to happen. And so it always actually makes sense to, I don't know if you guys are getting sort of recruiter messages in your inbox, but it always makes sense to just test the waters out and see what's out there. It doesn't always mean the grass is greener, because every sort of company, every role is going to have bullshit bureaucracy you do have to deal with. But it is good to know like what your worth is out there, and always get a sense of that. Okay, Sarfaraz. My guy Sarfaraz, this was one of my mentors early in my tech sales career. This guy's amazing. He works for a cool company called Z. If they're hiring any sales talent, you should definitely check out that company. Sarfaraz asks, how long does the process usually take from getting started to getting an interview? And what do your most successful candidates do? So you start, let's say you're a candidate, you start with us. Within 7 days, you are going to be in 2 to 4 interviews. And then after that, we always make sure you're interviewing with 3 to 4 companies. And so again, we want to make sure you're getting reps. And we also want to make sure you have lots of options to choose from, right? We want you to be feeling good about your job search, and we want you to feel like, awesome, like these are some cool companies. I don't feel any too much pressure, too much high stakes on one, because I got options here. And so we're going to handle that for you. We're going to get you in lots of interviews, all that kind of stuff. All right, my guy Aaron, he's got a question here. Samir, from when you started Tech Sales Mentors to where you are at now. Oh, actually, last part of Sarfaraz's questions. What do your most successful candidates do? And so really, the first thing would just be listening, and then doing what we say. Really, we've kind of systematized how to get a job in tech sales in 50 days. And so if you just follow those steps, like it's going to happen for you. But if you don't follow the steps, then like, you're going to get the same results that you have before. And, you're not going to be getting a job that you like. And so just listening and acting on what we're telling you to do, and not thinking, I'm too good for that or whatever. Other things our most successful candidates do is they come prepared. So they'll come prepared to our meetings. Again, that means they're listening and acting on what we're telling them. They're trying to go over the top. They're trying to find ways that they can do more, right? Because that's like a good sales rep. Someone who's always like, what more activity can I do? Someone who's sort of thinks that same way when it comes to our program has success. And then probably nothing actually related to like a day-to-day activity, but more so a mindset shift is when you join our program, you need to dedicate, let's say 10 to 15 hours a week to your job search. And so where are you going to come up with those 10 to 15 hours? You got to deprioritize something in your life, and you got to start prioritizing this. And so people who are able to prioritize their job search as a top priority in their life will get a job fast because they're allocating the time to following our prep, to doing interviews fast, all that kind of stuff. And so, so a question here from Aaron. When you started Tech Sales Mentors to where you're at now, what are the biggest changes you've seen in today's market? Yes, that's a great question. The first 2 years of our business, we were just in an amazing hiring market. Um, like companies would hire, and it's not to say these people can't get hired now, but it's increasingly difficult. Companies would hire bartenders. Companies would hire teachers. Companies would be hiring, like 911 operators. And it's not to say, actually, like all of those people, all of those job titles I just mentioned, all of those people actually perform pretty well in their tech sales roles. But what's happening from the hiring manager and employer angle is, they don't want to take as much risk. And so there's this saying from the 80s, it goes something like, nobody ever got fired for buying IBM. And in the 80s, IBM was like this big vendor, this giant everyone thought of as safe and not risky. And so basically what it means is like, oh, if I buy IBM and they don't work out, that's okay, because everyone's like, oh yeah, like IBM is supposed to work out. It makes sense, right? Whereas, oh, if you instead of IBM, you bought this like small startups product, your boss, and it didn't work out, your boss would be like, you fucking idiot. Like, what? Why didn't you just buy IBM? Like, this is obvious. And so, same thing with hiring managers today. They have a profile that, not every sales rep is going to work out for them. Not every hire is going to work out. And so, it'll be much easier for them to justify that if that person had previous sales quota carrying experience and they were crushing it versus someone who is, a teacher, never carried a quota before, never did cold calls, never did cold emails. And so sort of the profile of who's getting hired has narrowed. And so that would be one thing. Probably the other thing is just sort of leverage when it comes to what type of opportunity you can get. And so, you can negotiate an offer up 10, 15, sometimes 20K. Now, maybe you'll get it up 5K. Or lots of candidates like we talk to, they tell us, hey, we want a remote role, but given where their skill set and experience is, they're not going to get a remote role because remote roles have 10x the number of applicants, while hybrid roles and on-site roles, hybrid and on-site roles are really coming back and becoming a huge focus for these tech companies, and they're not getting enough applicants. And so companies want to hire hybrid and on-site talent, and they're willing to, lower their hiring bar there. And so as a candidate, you have to sort of realign your short-term expectation on what you expect out of tech sales, while still being mindful that all the medium and long-term benefits are still here. The career growth is still here. The income after being an SDR is still amazing. And there's still a lot that is great to our industry, but yeah, it's just slightly tougher, right? Like not everything is always up and to the right? Sometimes like it's like this, right? But it's still going up, right? And so bear in mind that, hey, if you are considering tech sales because you believe technology will only continue to be more deeply ingrained in businesses and our lives, then get into tech sales, because this is a great sort of long-term career path. And yeah, you can do great things in this industry. So thanks so much for the questions, guys. Thanks for coming. Really appreciate it. Again, if you're interested in getting our help in landing a top tier tech sales job in 50 days, check us out at techsalesmentors.com. And shoot me a message. Let me know how it went. Would love to hear what you think could have went better, what went well, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, thanks so much for joining me, guys. And I'll catch you around. See ya.